Hello, citizens for Joliet, for Tycee Bell. I am here to talk to you about my mayoral candidacy for the city of Joliet. I have some friends, some administrative folks that I can't wait for you to meet. We're going to have a brief discussion with each of them, and we're going to talk more about why your voice is a catalyst for change, why your vote is your voice, and most importantly, how we know what people like you care about and how we can find solutions for a better Joliet. If you limit your choice to what seems possible or reasonable, you disconnect yourself from what you truly want. As the mayoral candidate for the 2023 election coming up very soon on April 4th, 2023, I have thought a lot about what it means to be a citizen and a resident of Joliet, Illinois. I have done various forums, answered several questions, but most importantly, what I want you to hear lastly from me is the 4 points of engagement at which I want to involve you as a citizen. Healthcare, safety, employability, which we've been referring to as workforce development, and most importantly, your neighborhood improvement. How do we build block by block? Integrity. How do we build as a community together? So again, today, we're going to take some time, citizens for Tycee Bell, citizens of Joliet, and we're going to get you more engaged in the platform and talk to some of my friends and administrators in the city of Joliet. First up, I have Mr. Muhammad Fahim. We're going to talk to you today a little bit about why I think it's important that the workforce that we commit to is about building relationships with workers. Corporations, local and state, and federal entities have a vested interest in our workforce. And right now, some of the numbers are staggering. Joliet is at about 5.7. We'll talk about that in unemployment. But what's most important is how do we build a strong and skilled workforce? I think it has a lot to do with apprenticeship programs and bringing in trade, union, and labor that's going to invest in our teens that are coming out of high school and possibly looking for other ways to channel their energy as they make choices about what type of jobs that they would like to see. Secondly, we want to develop realistic pathways by doubling down. And what that means is that I'll be 46 this year. And what was young Tycee Bell doing at 23? She was definitely making a way to be here in front of you. I was looking at resources. I was working in non-for-profit, yes, at the young age of 23. So I want to encourage our community-based organizations to adopt programs that support the connection between education and work. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and allow Mr. Muhammad Fahim to tell you a little bit about what he does and why he's here with us today. Mr. Fahim, let's talk.
Hi, Tycee. Thank you so much for inviting me. Folks, it is extremely important what Tycee has been saying about workforce development, and especially the focus on youth and youth at risk is going to be very important for us. 5.7 unemployment in Joliet. Wow. How does that compare with our neighboring towns? Mm-hmm. I got some statistics just this morning from the Illinois Department of Employment Security and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Aurora is at 4.6, Bolingbrook at 4.0, Plainfield is 3.4, and Lockport is 4.3. Joliet is closer to 6. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you folks something. These numbers do not reflect the real unemployment.
Right.
These numbers are for the most made up, and depends on whose politics you're following.
Okay.
The numbers don't reflect the truth. Okay. They don't take into account, for example, underemployment. A lot of people are doing multiple jobs to keep food on the table. So your idea about talking to corporations and bringing in the investment from them for the future of Joliet is going to be very important.
Yes, I agree. And, that's something that I recently was working in that job force, as was talking about benefits for communities. We talk a lot about warehousing and why the warehouses are here, but what value do they bring to our city? So thank you for pointing out the vast majority of who we are in Joliet as citizens, because some of the people that we have, they are in Will County, right? So all of those cities that you mentioned are a part of Will County and Joliet as well. And our workers come from all over. Our families live in different areas, and some people travel to these other cities to work. So thank you for bringing that up. And what I like too about some of the statistics is, again, not just what's not happening, but how can we uplift that? So give us that highlight again. Like you said, we work multiple jobs, right? And that's necessary for many of us. Anybody who knows me knows I've worked 3 jobs for the last couple of years on and off.
Well, I spent almost 16 years working with the Illinois Department of Employment Security and their partners, the Illinois WorkNet Center. So I was the Director of Business Employment Services and Corporate Relations. And what I saw during that entire period is there are so many resources that are available both for the employer and the job seeker. Unfortunately, they don't know how to market themselves properly. These are government agencies, right? So they don't have a marketing bone in their body. And I came from outside the system into the workforce system. I had my own businesses and stuff. And so I came in as an outsider and said, how do we market these services? And that is where things took off. Most employers are not aware, for example, that there is an employee training grant that is available, through the Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration. So what does that mean? It means that you can actually get a grant to train your existing workforce on new equipment, new software, anything to retain and grow employment.
Oh, this is great. This is great stuff.
Okay. Now, most people also are not aware, for example, that the Illinois Department of Employment Security has a bond program for getting, incarcerated people, ex-offenders, back into workforce. There is a bond program available from the Department of Employment Security at no cost to the employer.
Okay.
So we need to focus more on getting the word out about these programs. And I'm pretty sure one of the things that really surprised me is on the Illinois, the Will County Workforce Board, there is no representation from the Joliet Mayor's office. That is something that needs to happen.
Yes. And that is why, again, for those listening and those who know both of us, I'm going to stop hitting this microphone. I talk with my hands. So that's something, again, that's a barrier that we have to remove. I think sometimes it's not, again, about listening to what we're saying that's not happening again, but again, the voice is the catalyst for change, bringing hope back. And so I hope that people are hearing, the messages that we're saying are about them and about us. Equity is not always about the fairness. It's about also the education piece, right? Knowing that these opportunities are there. And I think it also lends a hand to economic development, which we'll be talking about later, when new businesses and companies want to come to town, right? And someone like you who may be building and bringing a new business to town, those are things that those folks that come in the door need, is they need more people to talk about removing the barriers. What does an employer want? So when we say employability, it's up to us as employers to tell our employees, or it's up to us as a workforce to then work with someone like Will County, yourself. And again, these are solutions. They sound differently and they look differently when we're reading them, but it's up to us to, again, take time. And that's what I'm doing today. Really taking the time to let people hear this isn't just a piece of paper. This isn't just a platform and a 4-point system to get your vote. It's a reason behind it that we really want the people to see that we're a catalyst. We're going to move things forward, not fast enough, right? Because we're behind, as you pointed out, but build those relationships.
And the resources are there. One of the things that you started off was talking about youth employment. Okay, not everybody needs a 4-year college degree. I have presented workshops in different libraries on how to get a job right out of high school that does not require a 4-year college degree. If somebody can get into an apprenticeship program, that is something that you referred to also, as a CNC operator, for example, right? You don't need a 4-year college degree for that. You could get into that right out of high school. And in 10 years, believe it or not, you will be making a 6-figure income with no debt. Now, if the employer wants you to get back to college, the employer will pay for you to get into college. why are we not focusing on programs like this? Why are we continuing to put people into these 4-year college degrees, which are basically, money-making mills? People come out of that, they don't get a job. I have seen thousands of people, literally workshop programs that I started when I was with WorkNet. I presented workshops to about 20,000 people. Okay, how to find a job, goal setting, resume writing, interviewing. What is happening in the market now? You would be surprised how many people with 4-year college degrees are going back to community colleges
Yes.
to get a certification in a trade that can get them a job. That is what we need to focus on.
Yeah, the workforce looks different.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sound a little redundant, and I don't know if you have more to add, but I want to close us out with this statement that, when we continue to look at the workforce, and again, when we start using real terms like employability, federal funding, they call it code switching. When we begin to look at what the future looks like, right? It's you with several years of experience getting you on board with what I'm talking about, but then getting you and other people in places where they're either creating jobs, new systems, new ways. Those of us that, have alternate ideas about what it looks like for apprenticeships and things like that. Again, they fit into different categories. They wrap around the whole system. You talked about recidivism. So, what I want people to know as mayor, what I would propose again is envisioning buildings where folks are coming in and out. So we have the oldest college, Joliet Junior College. They are still adding programs. They just added a program around marijuana, right? So this has been a huge topic. So there are so many routes for us. The roads are endless. The ways and pathways that even our current system of workforce is creating, they're there. They're opportunities. And I just want to delight in the idea that when I win as mayor, the federal funding.
It's not if.
It's not
when.
if.
Okay.
No. When I win,
Yeah.
we want to target development and training. We want to create and retain businesses that attract more businesses, that stimulate the economy. So again, we've been not doing things wrong, but we want to right and correct the path. And we want to have different avenues for different people. We look different here in Joliet.
Absolutely.
Joliet is the third largest city. I have a list of resources that can help guide folks. You do as well as we continue on this journey. I hope to add you in as a top administrator on the team. So I want to thank you for being here. Do you have any closing remarks for the folks listening?
Well, again, it takes a person to change the system. And if you look at somebody who's been in politics all their life,
Yes, you have.
they are not about to change any systems. Okay, we need career politicians out of office.
Okay.
That's what I want to focus on and then finish up on.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Mohammed Fahim. You guys check him out, and we'll have
Tycee.
some information for you later. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Welcome back, citizens for Tycee. As promised, I'm here with my second guest, Mr. Paul Dickerson. He's a licensed social worker and resident of Joliet. And if you've been following the campaign thus far, I talk about healthcare and prioritizing Joliet's most vulnerable at-risk citizens. And what happens often when we say vulnerable, people think that we're only talking about maybe one group of people, but that really encompasses the family. When I think about vulnerable individuals, I think about someone who now has a lifestyle change in their health, someone who has a small child who gets sick after recovering from COVID and the pandemic. We've seen a lot of respiratory issues in our families. And then we have those that have disabilities, some that you can visibly see and some not so often visible. So our vulnerable at-risk citizens can include our veterans, can include our seniors, our families that are right at home with us day to day. And we don't often have to leave home to see them, but we have to care about them. And I believe we have to prioritize them. One of the things I want to talk about with Mr. Dickerson is not just this access to healthcare, but why do we care locally about residents in Joliet? And what are some of the solutions that, as a mayor, I can bring and I can harvest from my heart and truly intentionally put a plan in place and be a voice for you all as you share your stories and you share your concerns as citizens in Joliet. So let's welcome Mr. Paul Dickerson, licensed social worker. How are you today?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Me.
Of course, anytime. So let's start off with defining what it is, the system that we're talking about when we think about healthcare. And then as you talk about that, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of go through some of the ideas and success stories that you can share with Joliet.
Absolutely. One of the things that's very passionate to me is people that are suffering from food insecurity. Mm-hmm. And I think in order to fully understand what food insecurity is, you need to understand what the definition is. So according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, defines food insecurity as a lack of consistent access to enough food for every person in a household to live an active, healthy life. This can be a temporary situation or it can be a long time situation. And some of the common causes of food insecurity from people are suffering from is poverty, unemployment, or low income, lack of affordable housing, chronic health conditions, or lack of access to health care. And also, people are still suffering from the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic. So those are just a few of the common causes of food insecurity. And I think what people need to understand is that food insecurity can also cause some serious health issues. How can that be? Because people have to choose between buying food or taking their medication or paying for their health care, buying food or paying their rent, bills, and transportation. And that is something I feel that nobody should have to pick or choose between their health or putting food on their table.
I agree. And I know that's something that when we first met, right, that we talked about that we had in common. I had no idea that I would meet you that evening.
Absolutely.
So it was just a breath of fresh air that we ended up exchanging numbers. And a lot of the programs that I've seen or been a part of or worked with, they were very direct, intentional, but they were federally focused. So it was about how many people are in the room, how many people need access to this, who's coming to a pantry, how do we create those things. And so when you started to tell me more about what you saw and what you have done, I just knew I had to have you here to really just talk to the people about what you've done, number one, and then how you see it in the future and how we can help and work together and maybe bring more people. And when I say more people, 150,000 folks in Joliet, again, lots of people here, and the lack of things is always what gets illuminated, right? Is where the lack is.
Absolutely.
But I think people like you who come along and have a real gift and talent and heart to give back is what people want to see and what people want to hear about. So let's share a little bit about your vision and the things that you've been able to do with our guests and others that are listening.
Absolutely. So like she said, I am a licensed social worker. I do work at the University of Chicago, and I work with the vulnerable population of people that's oncology and hematology, so people that have cancer. And one of the things that we do an assessment of all of our patients. And it was a recurring theme that I kept seeing with my patients as far as they're suffering from being food insecure, not having enough food, having to choose between paying for their medication or treatment and putting food on their table. And what a lot of people don't understand with that population, they can't just go and eat regular food like you and I. They have specialized diets. And we didn't really have a plan in place, so all we was doing was sending them to local pantries. And as you know, a lot of the local pantries are not patient-centered.
Right.
Meaning they just give them what they have, and some of our patients have to have specialized diets, so they wasn't really getting any nutritional value out of that. So what I decided to do is I opened up 3 complementary nutrition stations. We don't even call them pantries, because complementary nutrition stations sound a lot more welcoming.
I forgot you told me that. Yeah. That's right. Complementary food nutrition stations.
Yes, complementary, nutrition stations, what we call them. So the patients know you're welcome to come. So I open up 3 of them at 3 of my offices that I work at. We do a no question ask, so they can come and they can take as much food and how often that they need. As long as we're open, the food pantry, they have access to our food, complementary nutrition stations, food pantries, whatever people feel more comfortable calling them. So what I did, I said, okay, I opened up these in the south suburbs. I want to bring it back to my local town, into the city that I'm living in,
Thank
Joliet. Because I said, I know it's a need here. So what I did for the past 2 years, what a lot of people don't know, is I've been feeding those, people within Joliet, with providing them with grocery and things here in Joliet. And, I don't have necessarily the support, because I'm new, not too many people know who I am and what I'm doing. So when I had the opportunity to meet you and I kind of told you a little bit of my background, what I've been doing for the past 2 years, you instantly connected with the vision, and we start talking and seeing what we can do together to combat food insecurity in the city of Joliet.
Yeah. And I mean, like anything, you want a plan, but even again, running for mayor, right? I have a plan, but I still have to do the work. It's a job application as well for me. I've said this before: the city, the residents, the current government in place, and the current employees of the city of Joliet. So we have to talk to them. We have to see how their current system is working, what's not working. We have to remove any barriers that we can. And then we also have to present some of these ideals that have been successful. And then I see a future for you. I told you this already, right? The young folks we talked about in the first segment, we see a future for food systems. I had an opportunity to meet with some folks from one of the nonprofits that I used to work with since you and I met. And one of the things I told them, I said, is, I want to bring this young man in. I know you got a great job at University of Chicago, but we want strong people on the team. We want strong people working on the administration, or at least as a liaison to the city of Joliet. So I appreciate you coming and talking to us about what it is your vision is. We will have time, I believe, I'm not sure if you want to share a little bit today, but we will have time to introduce what some of those projects look like that you've done. But if you want to share the one that you've already done here in Joliet, I know you have some partners. I'm not sure if you can, go into great detail about that, but I thought it was amazing how you did things, and I'm looking forward to the next step. So before we leave, can you give us a little bit of what that looks like, what that process is?
Absolutely. I partner with my mentor, Dr. Ann Jackson, with the Center for Food Equity and Medicine.
Hi, Dr. Ann.
And the first year that we did it at the Salvation Army, where we call it our pop-up complimentary nutrition station event, where we had different tables set up with different types of food, breakfast items, food, lunch items, fresh fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. And individuals were able to come in and go to each station and choose what they wanted.
Wonderful.
So the difference between that and going to some of the local pantries is they pretty much have prepackaged items and just give it to the individuals and say, have a nice day. But why give them something if I know they're not going to eat it, if they don't have no nutritional value to it? So the things that we set out for the individuals to choose from is things you and I put on our table and eat. And that's one thing I pride myself on, is the quality of the food that we put on our table. So they go around, they choose what they want from each table. We help them carry it to their car, and we say, have a nice day. And if they need some additional support, then they call us back. For those individuals who are unable to come out to our events, we delivered the groceries to their home.
Okay.
So that's something else beautiful that I would love to see the city of Joliet doing, because everybody can't come out to a local pantry and pick up the food. How about starting a program where we can deliver these groceries to the individuals' homes?
So your program, and thank you. Your program is another model and a way to get to those who have chronic illness, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the process is a no ask. Again, I I know that the local pantries utilize Northern Illinois Food Bank. That is a cost, right?
Absolutely.
So this isn't to replace those necessarily. This is giving us another avenue. There's another thing I talk about when I talk about food and nutrition and healthy families is utilizing the resources that we have downtown Joliet already. Joliet Junior College, Harris Casino, becoming the focal point and a hub. Lots of students come through there. So your program could even be one where people could be an intern and working from both sectors, right?
Absolutely.
And then learning about those that are sick, that are not well. Even the volunteer system, everybody's always trying to grow a volunteer base.
Absolutely.
So I love hearing that there's a need for your program once established at another local level, that we can actually build a volunteer base to help these families with chronic illness. So again, I applaud you. I'm happy again to think of this as a wraparound program and service for our citizens, because it's not just about supplementing things. It's about having something for the long term. Once people start to see themselves in dire straits, they often don't have a lot of checks that they can check off. This is something, to me, again, when I envision a future, when I envision not just changing something, but adding and complementing to what's already there. We're not taking away, but we're even giving dignity to those who may not feel as though they have the right to ask for equitable food and be secure and feel safe and feel like, hey, I might not even have to leave home if I can get some services from someone. So thank you again for coming. Any last thoughts?
Oh, thank you so much for just inviting me out here and allowing me to share what I hope, will be a vision of Joliet. Thank
of course.
You so much.
All right. Thanks again. And tell Dr. Ann I said hello.
Definitely will.
All right. All right, we're back with my final subject matter expert who's been with me along the way in this campaign as mayor for Joliet. This gentleman, Luther Johnson, is the president and CEO of History on Wheels. He's also a logistics subject matter expert. One of the reasons that we've been having conversations is because neighborhood improvements, safety, healthcare, how people get to work and how they transition and move throughout the city of Joliet is so important to me. So another gentleman and I were speaking about the importance of infrastructure, water, the raise in water rates, and how we're going to build the economy, what equity looks like in the city of Joliet. And again, all of those things are near and dear to our heart. But throughout this campaign, a lot of the questions have been, Ms. Bell, what are you going to do? Ms. Bell, what do you care about? And what can you do for us as citizens? And so I like to take a systematic approach. I like to take a strategic approach. And what Mr. Johnson has allowed me to do in our conversations is really think about how to build our city block by block. So each district has its own unique character, but the people, again, your voice, your vocal voice, your vote is what matters. Your ideas, how you've lived, how long you've lived in one area, where your grandmother raised you, what school you went to, those are all things that bring something to your heart. And we want to make sure in this campaign that we start talking about preserving our culture. And one of the things I think when we talk about that is how much economic development has went into the city, but also about looking at the past, the current, and the present and future. And so again, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest, Luther Johnson, to talk with us a little bit about what he does, who he is. He has definitely impressed me, and I want him to impress upon you a little bit about why he's important to the next steps in the phase of this election process.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Well, as you said, my name's Luther Johnson, and I'm not a native of Joliet.
Right.
I'm a West Side, city of Chicago, grew up, born and raised, went to Steinmetz High School. I've only been in the Joliet area for the last 15 years, but it has become home to me, and I've seen so many things change. I am the owner and CEO of History on Wheels. It's a 501c3 nonprofit business that focuses on the roles that African Americans played throughout history. So it was a brainchild of mine to bring the history to the children versus the children to the history, because what we have going on in our world today is difficult getting field trips planned. Like when we were coming up, we went to Lincoln Park Zoo, we went everywhere. So I started how to get the history to the children and being able to talk about where we came from so we know where we're going.
Okay.
As you know, in our school systems now, and one of the things you will face as mayor is to bridge that gap between the things that are being taught that are relative to people that look like us to the things that are not being taught.
Okay.
And that's the best way I can say it without sounding really harsh. However, that being said, I moved to the Joliet and I finished up my school. I ended up going to University of St. Francis.
Okay.
I finished a bachelor's there in logistics, and I went on to complete my master's in logistics and international logistics. And this town is going to be the mecca of logistics. In a few short years, I can see that every logistic type of cargo or freight will come through the surrounding suburbs: Joliet, Bolingbrook, New Lenox, Lockport, because we're not landlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's exciting.
It is very exciting.
It's exciting for the neighborhoods. It's exciting for the youth that are now in college that are growing up. And I want to circle back. One of your candidates said something very key early. You don't necessarily need one of your guests, not candidates, said you don't necessarily need a college degree to be successful. I wish I had met him about a few years ago, because I have a whole lot of debt. I didn't know all that. But however,
right?
He is absolutely true, because I was one of those individuals that was in an after school program. When I was in high school, I went to half a day of high school my senior year, and I went to Washburn Trade School.
Okay.
And I learned carpentry skills. I learned how to frame and drywall.
Wow.
And I was in a program that set me up that when I graduated out of high school, that I can become a carpenter.
Wonderful.
And so I didn't choose that road. I was just a passion of mine, but the program was there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I see all ties in. The other gentleman you had on right after me talked about food and nutrition. That ties near and dear to me, because one of the things I've seen in this area that I've lived in now for 15 years that we're lacking. We're lacking urgent care centers. We're lacking substantial major food chain grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about nutrition. And I talked to you about that. Because this is something dear and near to my wife, who is a daycare provider, and she teaches children about nutrition. It's the key. It's the foundation block for young children to be successful is nutrition.
Oh, yes.
If they can't function and they don't have the right nutrition, it's hard for them to be taught.
Oh yes, even young children, right? I just did a 7 Mountains. I just represented my own organization with the women, infants, and children at WIC. Right,
Mm-hmm.
So important, and all of them said we're all nutritionists. This is the way,
Correct.
and it doesn't discriminate. It's not a race thing. Every child born at 0 months deserves to have a healthy life. So
Correct.
yes, you are
Correct.
very, very, very correct about that.
And so I think we all separated by that thing of 6 degree separation. I think that is true. We all are interlinked and have the same vision and the same mantra to change for people whom look like us. And when we met, we got to talking, and we just started to say, wow, that's you want to do that? I want to do that. One of the projects that I'm heading up is the Cassidy House, and you're very near to that. It's going to be a project, and it's going to be a logistical project where it's going to be, I feel, the focal point of what I talked about, block by block, street by street growth. The Cassidy House is going to be eventually one of the first African American museums in the area, and we're going to use that as a resource center. It's going to be a place where people can come to gather information on nutritional programs, circling back to what he said, on programs if you choose not to go to college. What resources do I have as a teenager or an adult?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a place where we can help our veterans who need assistance. It's going to be a place, all this out of a small museum. And this is, when you and I talk, one of your visions for the city of Joliet, to have a plan in place to partner with the different districts to develop resource centers that all residents can use, to work with the food chains and the urgent care centers. These are all the things that you said that got me to say, let me listen to her. She might know what she's talking about.
Listen, the lady who did my website, give it out to Miss Angela Fenoy, Edutech Consulting. I gave her the same plan. I have not strayed, and that's what's important.
Correct.
Is that as I met you and some of the other gentlemen and women, we out there. I just did a Women's Day event yesterday, so I didn't leave you all out of this discussion. We'll circle back, but to your point again, wraparound services are how people think. It's our job as people who are stepping into policy and politics, and even like you said, being the largest North Inland port. When we have those questions about the infrastructure of Joliet, yes, we applaud Joliet for becoming what is going to be a capital, right? But we need to move in a way that systematically says who is the capital. Correct. Instead of saying and blaming people for being capitalist or not, agreeing with each other's policies and ways, right? We have met at an impasse where it's now about human capital. What do people really see? How do they feel at the end of the day? And who is removing those barriers for them, right? And I think, one thing about folks like you is the Cassidy House was just sitting there. I had no idea, again, that I would meet you. I had no idea that this would come back up in the city council meetings during this election season. And it did. And I thank God. I really do thank him, because ultimately he knows what we're looking at. And so transactions happen, but this is very transformational for a lot of us. Correct. Hearing you start to talk about that you went in on your own and said, what's going on over here at 575 Jackson Street? And then eventually, I think it took months, right, to get in contact with those who have been working on that project. Correct. And now here we are looking at not just one system and one building. And that's a lot of times what people want, right? They want to see not just a neighborhood revitalized, but they want to see long-term sustainable projects.
Correct. And that's what that project can do. Along with and again, when you and I talk, we want you as a candidate. What moved me was never inclusive. I mean, exclusive. You was inclusive. You want to include everybody. You said you want to work with everybody. You wanted the districts to come together. And that's what a true candidate does. You say, hey, how can I make the people and how can I serve the people? The bottom line whenever I looked at a candidate, I always wanted a candidate that's willing to be the servant first and then a leader later, because you can always lead, but if you can't follow, that's a problem. So when you and I talked, I was like, yeah, this is somebody who I really want to get behind and see where this train is going. And so we sat down several times, and again, we talked about all the things that were bells for me: urgent care, food system, the Cassidy House, neighborhood development, plans and infrastructure plans. And we even went down to programs that I shared with you about getting people who are looking for employment. I work in a logistics warehouse now, where I can tell you where if you had any skills of learning how to drive a forklift, we talked about it, the different types, you can be employed in a heartbeat. So these are things we need to leverage and share with our youth. Hey, you don't have to necessarily work at McDonald's. Let's put some programs and some training together. And you talked about, that's a great idea. Let's have a training center where we can train forklift driving and warehouse management systems, because this is where it is. Let's capitalize on it. You heard me say that the wind is at our back. Let's open our sails.
You did say that. You definitely said that. Wow.
So, and that's where I think right now you're at that position. The wind is at your back. Open your sails and let's take off on this.
And I think we will. Thank you for that, and thank you for the compliments. I mean, no one is paid today. FYI, y'all, this is literally from my heart, and we've been working together for months. Yes, I'll give you a second if you don't have anything else to add.
No, I just think one of the things that I wrote, and I didn't read off my notes because I didn't want to, but I think it's more genuine when I speak from my heart.
Of course.
But I just urge everyone to get out and vote on April 4th. I urge everyone to get out and vote, because it's the only way and the sure way you can make sure that your voice is heard as a citizen of this city. Get out and vote. Whether you agree with your term, just get out and vote, because many people died. Because I teach history. People died for that right. And that right I don't take lightly.
Well, thank you. And thank you for, like, again, bringing all of those issues in such a brief time that we had to the table. You know, again, when I think about infrastructure, neighborhood improvements, those are big words. Those are not a lot of words. But I talked to a gentleman this morning and he said, you know, we just need more of everything. And I said, well, people have been asking me to wave this magic wand. And I said, I don't believe in the magic wand and the dangling of the carrot. I believe in taking somebody by the hand and saying, here is Mr. Johnson. Here is this organization. And one of the businesses that I run is Seven Mountains, and it's about every area. And I think we've done a great job today touching on that. And that brings me peace, that brings me joy. And most importantly, it brings me to the close of why I wanted to do this with you all today, was because I believe in the next phase of the country is about building green infrastructure, green space. And those projects are happening in Joliet. We've been asked about them, 55, I-80, the warehousing. The important thing is that we again utilize the people. We again give them the power, the ability to say, if I had these options for a building and trade program, if I was a contractor who is not getting any local contracts, how is the city going to address that over the next 40 to 50 years? And so I urge people to also think about what barriers are in your way. How do you feel about what you heard today, and what can you do about it? Of course, one thing you can do is definitely get out and vote. The other thing is, I encourage you to take a look at my website. But again, these gentlemen, their information will be on the screen, their names. Reach out to them and start telling them what you expect from this administration when we come into office in April, because it's going to be very important. You have a right to a better future. You have a right to access things. And we have a right to build together. We have to open all those doors. And I want to see us again have a healthy environment. I want us to leverage those partnerships, but I want us to use the resources we have, the funding that we currently have, and seek more funding. Absolutely. I want us to build those bridges and close those gaps where people say that there may or may not be relationships. Let's build stronger ones. Some of you all have relationships that I don't have. Some of the families watching have been working in certain industries for years that I may have never tapped into. So we need your knowledge. We need your expertise. We will continue to build a strong team and administration as we go forward. I would say in closing, thank you to Mr. Johnson for being here. Thank you to Mr. Paul Dickerson, and of course to my dear friend Muhammad Fahim, and everyone here at Road to Eternity Studios. I just want to give a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Excellent.
Those of you listening and watching, I hope you've taken some time to just listen again, take notes, come back. If you can't watch the whole segment, please do us a favor. Let us know if you have any questions. citizensfortyceebell.com. We ask you to share your voice, and I will be again in front of you sooner than later with more information, more tools, more resources, and more opportunities to build together. So that's me signing out at my first and not last opportunity to speak to you all as a group. Thank you.